Okay. Can you take your seats, please? Okay, so using Python it's fun, it's easy, but sometimes our favorite language bites us. So Alessandro here is going to explain us some tips and tricks. Thank you, Alessandro.
So. Thank you very much for coming here. I am Alessandro Pisa. I am a software integrator for Untitled, that is a Python-based web agency that has implored its core business. And why I'm here? I'm here to talk to you about the missing bits that I found myself. That I started as a programmer, and then doing this as a job. I found out that I was missing some stuff, and I was underestimating some stuff, and I want to show you my experience of how I was able to feel this my lack of competence. And this is a brief story of how I met Python. My life was fun once. I was a little guy that liked to play football, but sometimes it was not possible to play football. But I wanted football so hard, and so the solution at the time, I'm talking about 25 years ago, it was Commodore 64, because all my friends got it and had nice games. So I asked to Santa to give me a Commodore 64. He made a little bit mistake. He gave me this, that it was a really nice piece of hardware, much better than a Commodore 64, but had no games and no games to share with my friends. And when you don't make people play, they will do nasty things, okay? So my nasty things was that I started programming, and in MSX2, it was something like blue screen of death all the time, an awful experience. So my life as a nerd was starting, but before I gave myself a chance, I tried to be a physicist. That in nerdish term is not a big leap, a big step forward, but come on, it's a nice try. Hardware once failed, and so I started to think that, okay, me and hardware have not a big feeling together. So I came back to software, and for physicists, software is Fortran. It was Fortran at the time. It was still Fortran at the time. I didn't like it to code in Fortran, so I started one day to read the tutorial of Python, and it was a lucky afternoon when I read the Python tutorial, and I started to dig into Python. And I finally convinced my boss to do Python in my job. And then, so we are ready to start. We have full batteries, and this is how the story ends, okay? So now, time for questions. Okay. Okay, come on. Now the questions, I will make some questions to you, because I want to know you better. I don't know, who's using Mac here? Can you raise your hand? Who's using Apple? OS X? Okay. So using Windows to make Python development? Okay. Who's using Linux? Okay, all the others. So the majority uses Linux. And how about the editor you're using? Are you using an IDE? Who's using an IDE? Okay, not that much. Who's using Vim, for example? Now, quite a lot of people. Emacs? Okay. Other fancy editors? Okay, what are those fancy editors? Sublime. Okay, Sublime is quite like an IDE. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. It has a lot of nice features. Okay. Why I'm asking that? But just to know you a little bit. But for example, the question of the operating system and the editor you're using, I find this very important for a programmer, because you have to feel yourself at home when you make your job. And so I bet you spent a lot of time to feel comfortable when you do the job. So did I. But sometimes it happens to be that during your job you're forced to use some other environment or some other tool. For example, who is forced to use Vim for I don't know, deploying on a client's on a customer server? For example, it happens to me many times that I have to. I don't use Vim as my main development environment, but I always use it when I'm deploying stuff on the server or when I'm there. So it is nice to be comfortable at home, but it is important also to be ready to face other environments, because there life is hard, and in my opinion, only the opinion, to follow those sources. Twitter is another example. On Google Plus, there are even a lot of people that are writing nice documentation, and in my opinion, it is really important to follow these channels just to get yourself comfortable with the current status of what Python is. And okay, if this one is for you, for your knowledge, but if you're missing some stuff, it's important that you should ask help. Okay. First of all, you can check if there are people that make Python around you. Probably there are other people close to you that introduce you to Python, but maybe not. Maybe you were just reading about it. And in case you don't know anybody who can help you, you can just look for some Python user group around. And if you don't, if you're not able to contact physically those people, you can use, for example, other sources of other ways to contact them. Really important are the mailing list. I've been an eager lurker on mailing list since I started first using Linux, and then using Python, and even if the topics on the mailing list does not fit what you're looking for, you start getting into Python better, because you see what people are doing, what people are asking. You learn how to put questions and so on. Another source of another way to go in contact with Pythonistas is the IRC channel, the Internet Array Chat. And if you have a specific question, you can always count on Stack Overflow, that in those years became one of the major and the better places where to ask. Who does not know Stack Overflow? Is that okay? I'm glad that anybody knows Stack Overflow, because it's amazing and it's important to be there, because it is really nice how the questions are treated, moderated, and also the answers are moderated. And when you find something on Stack Overflow, is a really authoritative source of information. Okay, you can check also the community on Python. There are other tips to get you in touch with other Pythonistas. And I'm really glad that you're following conferences, because here in conferences it is really important to know other Pythonistas, to get in touch with them. You start to know other people, what they are doing, to make collaboration, and this is really nice. So don't hesitate to meet people that are not from your country, from your business. Start to share your experiences with people you don't know, and you are here, and use this opportunity to improve your relationship with other Pythonistas. Okay, now a little bit we will come back a little bit back in Python development. When I was a programmer, I didn't use when I started as a Python programmer, I didn't use the right tool. One of the tools that I first saw it was really important for my job was PDB. At the beginning, I didn't saw the potentiality of PDB, but then when I started my job, I said, oh, come on, how could I live without the Python debugger? Python debugger lets you dig inside the gears of your code, and it is a really nice piece of software and tool to use. And as you see, if you go, there are nice sources of information about how to use PDB. You can check the PyModule of the week.com site. That is a nice place where to find up information. And it will give you some examples of how to use PDB from a simple way to an advanced way. And if you look for PDB in PyP, the Python package index, you can see that there are many variants of PDB and extensions to PDB, and you will see many products. And this is important for you to at least to check if there are some other debugging tools for the app you're working on. For example, I do Plone, and there are a lot of packages that help you in debugging the Plone. Plone is a really complex stuff, and there are really advanced debug packages, and this is a nice help for me during my daily job. Okay, Another thing that I was doing wrong when I started was that I used to debug with print. First, because I didn't know the potentiality of PDB, but anyway, now I think that print is the wrong way. I'm sure about it, and the way I like to know what my code is doing is logging. I was underestimating logging until I had something like I don't know 100 sites around the world that were doing stuff, and you cannot watch them always to see what they're doing. And so I really like the potentiality of logging. To log stuff is important because you can at any time see what happened in a certain place, and so when something happens, you're ready in advance to know what was the status of your software at the time. Another thing I learned to use when I started my job was that I started using exceptions more and more to control the flow of my application. Okay, exceptions are bad, especially when you're making a web application, because if you do not handle the exception, the user of your application will see an ugly error served by the server, and we don't want to do that. We want to handle the exception. If something goes wrong, we have to gracefully say to our users that that we know that something is bad and we're sorry, and so on. Okay, so a little bit about style now. Style for Pythonistas is important. We know that our language, in our language, indentation is a functional part. Is really important for us. And what I suggest you is to check that your editor is always respect this thing that is called PEP8. PEP8 is a set of rules that tells you how your code should be formatted. One of the important parts is that you should learn how to document it to properly indent your code. Do not use tab, use spaces. Do not put trailing spaces against it, even because there are some people that have an editor that highlights the unwanted spaces very hard, and they will not like your code. Okay, even if this code is working, you see when you open it with UI, it's not properly written. Okay, there are some other packages around, like PyFlakes, PyChecker, and PyLint, that will tell you how good your code is. And I really suggest you to give a check to those packages. For example, in Sublime and other editors, also in Vim, it's possible to integrate those tools, just to have your code properly formatted, just on saved, and that if you make something that goes against PEP8 or is not functional, those editor will immediately tell you that something is wrong. Another thing that I suggest you is to use a lot PyP. I was always reinventing the wheel when I started. That's really bad. Probably if you start to check how to solve a simple task, it is already solved by someone else on the Python package index, and you can see there that you can look there for the packages. I don't know. There are many of them. and you can even upload there your code. Okay, it is the Python package index is even a nice source of information. Okay, it is one of the sources I check daily to see what other people are doing, even from my deploying community or from something else. And it is another way to check the state of the art of what Python is, of where Python is addressed to. And if you have to upload something like a package that prints a nested list, please use test.py, because I don't know if anyone noticed that on PyP there are a lot of packages for printing nested list. Does anybody knows about it? Okay, so. Because in a book there was this example of a package that was for printing a nested list, and it suggested you to upload the package on PyP, and every day there are something like 10 new packages that do this stuff. Another thing that I found very useful for my job is the use of virtual env. Virtual env is in my opinion, fundamental to isolate your software. I like to have my software isolated from my environment. I want, when I deploy something on a server, I want everything under one folder. And virtual env is a nice way to struggle, to tend to this situation. If you want to look for the documentation, you can check those links. And I use virtual env with build-out. Build-out is something that goes a little bit beyond Python, because with build-out you can do basically anything, and helps you add stuff to your virtual env just to have everything inside your folder. I don't know. Who use build-out here? Okay, not so many. But I suggest the others that don't use it and don't know it to check it out, because build-out can be painful to learn. Sometimes it's hard to use it to properly build your build-out, but it is very flexible and gives you a lot of power. Okay, another thing I was doing wrong before was to make copies of my code or tar archive or zipping code. And when I started doing my job, I learned that there was a really better way to do that. And this way is to control the version of your system, of your code, and there are many tools to do that. There is Bazaar, there is Git, Mercurial, Subversion. There are some difference about them. It is not my intention to discuss about this, but there is, if you want to make experiments on your code, and you don't want to lose your working code, I suggest you to learn those tools, because they come very handy, and they come handy mainly when you work with other people, because you can start working on different features, modify your software, implementing different features, and then merge them together using those tools is really better than in any other way. There are some free services where you can put your code on, and it is nice to have the code there, because Python gives you a lot of stuff, and in my opinion, it is important to give the community your work back. What Python gives to you is important to give it back to the community. In my opinion, you can choose anything you want. And if your code has problems, get used to learn to use some ticketing system. There are many around. You have just to choose. I put a link to Wikipedia with a list of issue tracking system. There are really many I'm using just right now. We're using Track, we're using Redmine, we're using Mantis. There are many tools that where you can put issues signalation on about your code. And there is also GitHub. If you, for example, if you release your code on GitHub, people can open issues on GitHub. And at the end, it comes quite hard to check all those sources of issues. And I suggest you to try something like a ticket aggregator. For example, there is a nice Python package that is Bug Warrior. Bug Warrior is a package that is an application that pulls the ticket from different sources. For example, for different tracks, different Redmine, different GitHub repositories, and aggregates them in a way that that you can check at a glance what you can do. It even has some way to prioritize the ticket, so it's really quite a nice piece of software. I really suggest it. Okay, another thing, when you develop software, test it, because I remember tests that were running even in the coin-op when I was 6 years old, and tests are really a nice feature in the software. There are many ways to make tests. There are unit tests, load tests, functional tests, and I suggest you even to inspect some agile methodology for your work. It may fit. For example, in my company, we are striving for that, and we try to be agile. We're doing some Kanban, and I really suggest you to follow a path like that, because knowing it helps you to manage better your work. Another thing is that okay, your code is tested, your code works, you made a nice piece of software, but before releasing it, it's better if you benchmark, because you have to know how good in terms of performance your code is. You should put some load tests on it. You should start to monitor your software, because if something goes wrong, you have to know it in advance and receive alerts before the customer will complain about it. And you have to ask yourself if your software is scalable. How can your software cope with more data, more user, more requests? Sometimes you make something that works perfectly on your laptop, but when you release it on the superpower server and it starts to go in production, maybe there are, instead of one user that is you, there are 10 concurrent users, and you find that those 10 concurrent users are killing your application. So if you have to fail, is another advice: fail fast. Because if you want to try something and just understand as soon as you can if this will lead you to success or to failure, I think this is really important, because sometimes you don't fail fast and you find out yourself in a bad situation. And many times I found myself in this in the ugly situation where my software was putting me with my back against the wall, and it's really not good. For example, I'm doing web stuff. Many times we have to aggregate some web services to work together, and this is I can assure you that it's not nice, because sometimes you find that your shiny, beautiful application that is working fast relies on a server that on another service that for some reason gets slow, and your application will have to wait for it, and that's not good. Another thing, an example, for example, there is feed parser that is a library to fetch RSS, and this library does not have a timeout parameter, and so if you we relied on it for one of our projects, and there was a source of RSS that was not returning you the RSS fast. And it was locking the thread, and so the application was not responding at all. Okay, so I have to thank you because of coming here and listening to me. I wanted to do the presentation very fast and leave you with this slide with almost all the topic that I covered, because there are many things to say, and of course the time is not enough. And if you have questions, I would like to go deeper into those topics if you want. So I'm here. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
About this cloud, can you tell us something about degradation?
Sorry? Okay, yes. Many times, your software expects that your data is coming in some format. But sometimes, I don't know. For example, they put they ask you to give some data, but you don't have all the bits, and in my opinion, your application should be nice to handle this stuff, and to say, okay, we don't have all the data, please provide us those data. I think this is something that any application should do. So if you don't have all the bits, just handle it in order that your application will not break, but will respond to your user in a proper way. Yes.
Can you tell us a few more things about logging and how you go about that?
Okay, so one of the things that I like more about logging is the logging the exceptions. Okay, I don't know if you looked at the keynote of PyDanny yesterday, and anyway, you can. I was making even some additional stuff about this. Then I pulled them out because okay, now I have them. For example, I made you an example with a login and the exception that is handled. You see, you can define a logger, and this is a function that returns the absolute ratio between two numbers. This is just an example; it's not a working code, and the absolute ratio is a number that for sure is not negative. But you can say, okay, I want my application to return a number anyway, and if something goes wrong, I want my number to return -1. And if something goes wrong, I want even to know what's happening. And for example, if I call this function with those two arguments, one and none, and one and zero, it will fail and will return me -1, but I will know why it is doing like that. For example, the first log will tell me that I'm passing 1 and none, so I know my arguments. And the other one, 1 and 0, and it will tell me which is the exception. Okay, and this is really useful if you have unattended programs that where you should know what's happening after someone tells you, okay, we had a problem. And it is nice to know what this problem is in advance. So handling the exception is good. You can even erase it, the exception after handling it. And in my opinion, it is a nice thing I'm doing in my software that I wasn't doing it before. Here you can find some links to the Python Model of the Week site about logging. There are many examples, many interesting examples about how to use logging in your application. There is also a review of about exceptions, and okay, that's it. Is it okay, or if you want to know anything else, just ask.
Hi, thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you.
Your talk contains a lot of useful links, and I would like to know if you could publish them so we could retrieve the links later.
Okay, okay, sure. I will put this presentation is on Google Drive, but I will put it on as a share.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, if you want, I can share your presentation by mail. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I'll come back to this slide. Something that is in the slide but is not covered, was not covered in my presentation was fabric. No, football. Okay, was one of the topic at the beginning, but I don't think you want to talk about football. Okay. Does anybody here uses fabric? Is interested about it? Yeah, I know. Okay. So I think fabric is a nice way to avoid the developer repetitive task, and I think many of you make software even to avoid to do repetitive task, and if you're doing it on remote servers, and I'm doing it, I suggest you to check it out. And okay. So.
A question over there.
Thank you for the talk. How many years do you program already in Python?
I started using Python something like 10 years ago.
10 years, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Can you tell us how you do profiling, some good practices, tools maybe?
Okay, sometimes I'm working with Plone. There are some nice tools there to profile Plone, and I'm using that. Anyway, some other times I found myself just measuring the execution time on with time it of the code, and it's just a nice way to know what to do, how to handle that. There are also nice stuff I'm using to understand where my code spends the majority of its time. Those are mainly addressed to Plum, and there are some tools that monitor the length of the request to my web server. And if the request is longer than sometimes, it will output the traceback of the code. It will not raise an exception. It will just show in that moment what your code is doing. And this is another thing that helps you a lot, because knowing where you're blocked is helps you to find out the bottleneck, and when you solve the bottleneck, you go. Okay.
Just about profiling, there was a you asked for like what tools are used, and you didn't mention there's a C profile module that could, there's a C profile module that could be used to actually like you said, identify like the blocking parts of your code, and there is a GUI interface that I really like. I'm not in any way related to them, so that's why I could advertise. It's called Run Snake Run, and it could basically you give as input the outputs of your C profile profiling, and the outputs as imbricated boxes, the parts of your code where you spend the most time, and then you identify the bigger box and try if you could reduce it.
Okay,
and it's a really useful way to profile your code.
Nice tip. Thanks.
So I haven't heard about build out yet. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on why I should use it and maybe when I should use it.
Okay, so build out is nice because it is nice to deploy Python application. I don't know who's using pip here. I saw very few people uses build out, but for example, there are many people that use pip install requirements. And how many are using pip to deploy application? Okay. And when you deploy application, there are many times where you don't want just to deploy your application. For example, with pip you can install your software, but perhaps you're missing some scripts to have it running, to I don't know, some script to rotate your log, and with build out you can have all those pieces together. For example, you can define some rules in the build out that will tell you, okay, put my application there. For example, my Plum site, my Django site, my everything I need. Then put an init script inside this init folder. Configure my Apache to serve to listen to those requests. Put me a log rotate configuration. Handle the cron tab, and you do this just with one command. And this is a really nice point. For build out, because it does not provide you just with the Python bits, but even with every other aspect that your application needs to be properly deployed. And of course, you don't want to do this manually, because it is a lot of stuff that probably is repetitive. I don't want to write 10,000 init scripts in my life that do almost the same thing and differ just for a little bit. I want build out to do that for me. Okay. There are some disadvantage. There is a little bit of disadvantage using build out, because build out sometimes is not so reliable. For example, if you build out wants the net to properly work sometimes, because you can extend, and this happened to me many times. You want to extend build-out configuration that are hosted somewhere on a public website. For example, the Plum build-out relies on the desktop site to properly work. And so, if the desktop site is low or is down, you can find yourself without build-out. So you have to be prepared even for this stuff. Anyway, it is nice to have build-out to work. You can do it to work even without an internet connection. You can do it, but it is a little bit extra work.
Any more questions? Okay. Yeah, I think we're done.
So,
thank you, Alessandro. Thank you very much.
Grazie.